Cowboys Nation, we need to talk right now because what's happening in Dallas is absolutely wild. Two major stories just dropped simultaneously, and they're taking this franchise in completely opposite directions. One has me jumping out of my seat with excitement about championship possibilities, while the other has me shaking my head wondering how we got here. Before we dive deep into both of these situations, make sure you smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications because we're delivering daily Cowboys content that you cannot miss anywhere else. We're racing towards 16,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps us grow this community. Let's get into this because the clock is ticking and Cowboys fans everywhere need to understand what's really going on. All right, let me set the stage for you. We're sitting here in the middle of the offseason, right? Training camp is approaching fast, and the Dallas Cowboys are dealing with two situations that perfectly capture where this organization stands right now. One story involves potentially bringing in a legendary running back who could be the missing piece that takes our offense to another level. The other story is about a player who fought his way from being undrafted to earning a $9 million contract, but now he's staring down the barrel of a felony charge and might not even make it to September on this roster. These aren't just random headlines, people. This is the reality of modern NFL roster construction. You're constantly building with one hand while potentially tearing down with the other. So let's break down both situations piece by piece, because there's so much more happening beneath the surface than you might realize. First, let's talk about the exciting part, the part that actually has me believing this offense could be something special. You remember last season, right? For the first time in what felt like forever, we actually had a legitimate running game. Clint Adams came in as the offensive coordinator and completely transformed what had been one of the most pathetic rushing attacks in the entire league. We went from being a total joke on the ground to cracking the top 10 in rushing efficiency. That's not a minor improvement. That's a complete philosophical overhaul. And the centerpiece of that transformation was Javonte Williams. This man put together an incredible season, racking up over 1,200 yards on the ground, averaging 4.8 yards per carry, and finishing fourth in the entire NFL in yards after contact. When Williams hit the line of scrimmage, he was an absolute battering ram. Defenses knew he was coming, and they still couldn't stop him consistently. That's the kind of physical runner that opens up everything else in your offense. It creates play-action opportunities. It keeps defenses honest. It shortens the game in the fourth quarter when you need to control the clock. But here's the problem, and this is something that really bothered me as the season wore on. You could literally see Javonte Williams getting worn down game after game. Look at the numbers from the final 5 games of the season. His yards per carry dropped to 4.3, and more importantly, you could see it with your own eyes if you watched closely. That explosion through the hole wasn't quite as violent. Those cuts weren't quite as sharp. The man was exhausted, and why wouldn't he be? We didn't have a single reliable backup behind him. Not one person on that depth chart could come in and give him a legitimate breather without the entire running game grinding to a halt. That's coaching malpractice if we're being honest. You cannot ride one running back into the ground in today's NFL and expect him to be effective in January when the games actually matter. We learned that lesson the hard way, and now the front office has to figure out how to fix it before we waste another season. So heading into this upcoming season, the hope has been that Jaden Blue would step up and claim that backup role. Blue is young, he's got potential, and I'm rooting for him just like I root for every Cowboys player trying to make this team better. But potential doesn't mean production, and right now, Blue has a lot to prove. He hasn't shown us anything yet that would make you feel confident handing him 15 carries in a crucial December game. And that's precisely why this next name is generating so much buzz around Cowboys circles right now. ESPN analyst Matt Bowen recently floated the idea of Dallas potentially signing Nick Chubb, and I'm not going to lie to you, the moment I heard that name, everything clicked. It makes so much sense on so many levels that I'm surprised we're not talking about it more. Now, I already know what some of you are thinking. You're saying Nick Chubb is washed up. He's dealt with devastating injuries. He's 30 years old. His best days are behind him. And look, I'm not here to tell you that Nick Chubb is still that dominant force who was bulldozing through defenses for 1,500 yards a season. Those days are probably over. But let's talk about what he actually showed us last year with the Houston Texans, because the narrative doesn't match the reality. Even after everything he went through with those injuries, Chubb was more efficient than Houston's primary ball carrier Woody Marks. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry compared to Marks at 3.6. He forced 28 missed tackles on just 136 touches, which tells you that his vision and his understanding of leverage is still elite. This isn't some washed-up player stumbling around the field hoping to hang on for one more paycheck. This is a seasoned veteran who understands blocking schemes, who knows how to set up his blocks, who knows exactly when to cut and when to lower his shoulder and drive forward for extra yards. When you look at the rest of the running back market right now in free agency, who else is out there? You've got Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson, Alexander Mattison. None of those guys have the combination of experience, efficiency, and football IQ that Nick Chubb brings to the table. Chubb is a 4-time Pro Bowl selection. He's played in massive games under enormous pressure. He knows what championship football looks like, and that presence alone would be valuable in a locker room. But here's where I want to pump the brakes a little bit, because I don't think the Cowboys should be rushing out to sign him tomorrow morning. That would actually be a mistake, and I'll tell you why. You've got Jaden Blue on the roster. You've got other young backs who need development opportunities. If you bring in Nick Chubb right now during the offseason, you're immediately taking reps away from players who desperately need those reps to grow. Chubb doesn't need a full training camp to be ready. He's a professional who's been doing this at the highest level for years. He can walk into a facility 2 weeks before the season starts and be ready to contribute immediately. So here's what the smart play looks like in my opinion, and I think the Cowboys front office is already thinking along these lines. You let the young guys battle it out all summer long. You give them every opportunity to win that job through competition and performance. You see what Jaden Blue looks like with a full offseason to prepare. You evaluate whether anyone else on that roster can step up and be that reliable second option behind Javonte Williams. And then, if we get to late August and nobody has separated themselves, if nobody looks ready to handle that responsibility, that's when you pick up the phone and you call Nick Chubb's agent. You bring him in, you sign him to a reasonable deal, and you immediately upgrade your running back room without having wasted valuable development time on a veteran who didn't need it. That's how you protect Javonte Williams from another season of getting ground into dust. That's how you maintain the rushing attack that Clint Adams worked so hard to build. That's how you make sure that when December and January roll around, your starting running back still has fresh legs and that same explosive power he had in September. This is the kind of strategic thinking that championship organizations employ. You don't make panic moves in April. You let your process play out. You trust your evaluation system, and then you strike at the right moment when you have all the information. If Nick Chubb ends up in a Dallas Cowboys uniform by September, I think a lot of fans are going to be really excited about what this offense could look like. Imagine defenses having to prepare for Javonte Williams pounding them for 3 quarters, and then here comes Nick Chubb spelling him in the 4th quarter when everyone's tired and beaten up. That's a nightmare scenario for defensive coordinators. That's the kind of depth that keeps your offense humming all season long without breaking down when you need it most. But now I've got to shift gears completely because while we're sitting here talking about potentially adding weapons and building something special on offense, there's a completely different situation unfolding on the defensive side of the ball that could end up being a major distraction. And this one hits different because it's not about talent, it's not about scheme fit, it's not about contract negotiations. This is about personal decisions and legal consequences, and it involves a player whose entire future with this organization is hanging by the thinnest thread you can imagine. We're talking about safety Marquez Bell, and before I get into what's happening right now, let me give you the backstory because it matters. Marquez Bell is exactly the kind of player that fans fall in love with. He wasn't some first-round draft pick with a guaranteed roster spot. He didn't come from Alabama or Georgia with national championship rings and constant media attention. This man came out of Florida A&M as an undrafted free agent with everything to prove and nothing handed to him. He fought for every single snap. He contributed on special teams. He showed enough versatility to play safety and linebacker when the coaching staff needed him in different roles. And just last March, he earned himself a 3-year contract extension worth $9 million. Think about that journey for a second. Undrafted to $9 million. That's the American dream playing out on a football field. That's the kind of story that makes you root for someone because you know they earned every single dollar through blood and sweat and refusing to quit when most people would have given up. And now here we are, and I hate even having to tell you this part, but you need to know what's going on. Back in April, Marquez Bell was pulled over by police. The officers smelled marijuana coming from the vehicle. A search was conducted, and they found less than 2 ounces of marijuana plus a THC electronic cigarette. Bell was arrested on the spot. He's now facing a felony charge for possession of a controlled substance and a misdemeanor charge for marijuana possession. This isn't speculation. This isn't a rumor floating around social media. ESPN's Todd Archer reported this with documentation from Collin County. The case is ongoing right now as we speak, and the Dallas Cowboys are fully aware of the situation. When asked about it publicly, the organization declined to comment, which should tell you everything about how serious this is and how carefully they're handling it internally. Here's where this gets even more complicated for Marquez Bell. It's not just about the legal system. Once his case works through the courts, the NFL is going to conduct its own review under the personal conduct policy. That means even if he somehow avoids serious legal consequences, he could still be facing a suspension from the league. We're potentially talking about missing games, meaningful games, right as a brand new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker is installing his system and building his defense. And if you're trying to make a roster and prove your value, missing time is basically a death sentence because the coaches can't evaluate you if you're not on the field. But wait, it gets worse for Bell. Even without the legal trouble, even if none of this had happened, his roster spot was already in serious jeopardy. Look at what the Cowboys did this offseason in the secondary. They went out and signed Jalen Thompson away from the Arizona Cardinals on a 3-year deal worth $33 million. They traded up in the draft with the Miami Dolphins to select Ohio State safety Caleb Downs with the 11th overall pick. They brought back Malik Hooker on a restructured contract. They added P.J. Locke in free agency. That safety room went from thin and questionable to absolutely loaded with proven talent and high draft capital investment. Bleacher Report's Mo Moton straight up listed Marquez Bell as one of the players most likely to be cut this offseason, pointing out that he could realistically be fourth on the depth chart at his own position, fourth on the depth chart while carrying a $9 million contract and facing potential legal consequences and league discipline. That is not a sustainable situation. Now, before all this legal stuff came to light, there was actually legitimate excitement about how Marquez Bell might fit into Christian Parker's new defensive system. Parker loves versatile players who can line up in multiple spots and create confusion for opposing offenses. Bell has that hybrid ability to play deep safety, come down in the box, and even play linebacker in certain packages. That skill set was getting people excited about his role in the new defense, but then the Cowboys went out and added depth at linebacker too, bringing in players like D. Winters and keeping Jaron Kearse around. So even that potential path to playing time is getting narrower by the day. The Cowboys aren't going to make a rush decision here, and that's actually the smart approach. If they cut Bell before June 1st, it impacts their salary cap differently than waiting until after. There's a dead money hit of $2.3 million if they move on from him post-June 1st. So Dallas is going to let the legal process play out. They're going to see what kind of discipline the NFL hands down, if any, and then they'll make their decision based on all available information. But make no mistake about it, if this situation gets worse, if there's a significant suspension coming, if the legal outcome creates the kind of distraction that Jerry Jones absolutely hates, they will cut bait and move on. And honestly, at that point, you can't even blame them. This is a business, and the Cowboys have invested too much money and too many draft picks in that safety position to let one player's off-field decisions derail everything they're trying to build. I genuinely hope Marquez Bell gets his life straightened out. I hope he handles his legal situation properly. I hope he learns from this mistake, and I hope he finds a way to salvage his NFL career, whether that's in Dallas or somewhere else. But right now, today, as things stand, he is on the thinnest ice imaginable. One more misstep, one more piece of bad news, and he's gone. That's just the reality of his situation. So let me bring this whole thing together for you, because when you step back and look at both of these stories side by side, a really clear picture emerges about where the Dallas Cowboys are as a franchise right here in this moment. On the offensive side of the ball, there's genuine legitimate reason for optimism and excitement. The running game made massive strides forward last season. Javonte Williams proved he can be a legitimate number one back in this league. The conversation around potentially adding someone like Nick Chubb shows that the front office understands the importance of depth, which is something Cowboys teams have historically ignored until it's too late. That represents growth, that represents smart football thinking, and it gives you hope that this organization is finally learning from past mistakes. But on defense, particularly in the secondary, this is a team in complete transition mode. They finished dead last in pass defense last year, 32nd out of 32 teams. That's unacceptable for a franchise with championship aspirations. So now they're scrambling to fix it, spending big money on proven veterans, using premium draft picks on high upside prospects, and potentially cutting loose players who just a year ago were seen as important pieces of the puzzle. That's what happens when you fall that far behind. You have to make dramatic moves to catch back up. Is this Cowboys team in a good place right now? Honestly, it's complicated. There's real talent being assembled here. There's no question about that. The coaching staff seems to have a clear vision for what they want to be on both sides of the ball. But there are also question marks at critical positions. There are legal distractions that could blow up at any moment, and there's a defense that still has an enormous amount to prove before anyone should feel comfortable or confident. This is a pivotal moment for this franchise. The decisions made over the next few months are going to determine whether we're legitimate contenders or whether we're just another talented team that underachieves when it matters most. I'm going to be tracking every single move between now and week 1 like my life depends on it. Every signing, every cut, every depth chart update, every injury report, all of it matters. And if you want to stay locked in with me through all of it, you need to subscribe to this channel right now. We are so incredibly close to hitting 16,000 subscribers, and this community is growing stronger every single day. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button on this video because it genuinely helps us reach more Cowboys fans, and I will see you in the very next video with more breaking news and analysis. How about them Cowboys?